All right, what's up, everybody out there? Hope the connection is good. I wanted to go outside on my porch where my lighting is better, and it's beautiful night in Florida tonight. But my daughter is out there and would not allow me to go out there, so I'm back in my normal room where the lighting is not as good because the light is directly behind me. So was hoping to do it on the porch tonight, but got kicked out. Hope everybody's doing all right. This is probably the fourth or fifth time we've done YouTube Live since the um, kind of lockdown pandemic um, time period, probably sometime middle of March, third week of March, and now we're almost into May. Kind of crazy crazy how time flies and where it's been and where it's gone. So I hope everybody's doing all right out there. See how many people we get in tonight and what we can kind of jump into tonight. Just labeled the chat split field coverages just so I gave it a name or something. As usual with all the other chats that we do, it doesn't have to be about one topic. It can be about anything you want it to be about. But when you go on live, when you set something up, you have to give it a title. So I figured split field coverages is one of those catchy titles. So if people see it, um, maybe it'll get people to either jump in or view. Yeah, we're all surviving. I hope, Hunter. And kind of using the last couple of weeks as a social media time and doing a bunch of giveaways with the head company I work with, Dome, and then just got some backpacks from a sporting goods company that I work with. So we've been gave one away so far, and we got to pick a winner from yesterday's that we did. So just finding different ways to kind of still stay football related, but at the same time not get too crazy about it. It's interesting when you do giveaways on social media. You try and just pose a question that people can answer, and um, everybody comes back with 18 hypothetical responses to what they would do or how they would do it, and all you're really trying to do is pose a question to get people to kind of participate, and then pick a winner from there. And everybody gets kind of crazy with how they choose. You frame a question up, and people come back and ask you all kind of different analytical situations, and you kind of feel like just saying, hey, listen, it's a question on social media to give away a hat or a backpack. Just kind of answer the question. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be as crazy and in depth as you make it. Just kind of answer the question. And but there's always going to be those people out there. So if you're in the social media world or the YouTube world like this, or whatever world you're in, there's always going to be people like that. You just got to kind of go along with it, play along with it, and just thank everybody for participating. So we've had some overwhelming responses. We've had some questions and some videos that have that have gotten 25 to 30,000 views on Twitter, and the one we did yesterday for the backpack, there were 17,000 views, and then guys responded from 35 different states, and a guy responded from Italy. Um, so been pretty cool. Oregon Coast, how you doing? Yeah, it was the backpack one yesterday was interesting because it was a little bit more business orientated, trying to get people to follow the sporting goods company that I work for, and couldn't really do a question of the day since I'm already doing question of the days with Dome Hats, and didn't want to take the thunder. The question of the day from Dome Hats was such a great idea when it first started. On we first started it in the middle of March, and I didn't want to steal anything from Dome, but at the same time, I wanted to advertise for the other companies that I kind of work with a little bit. So just trying to find different ways to do it. And I went through the information yesterday and tallied it up, and couldn't believe there were 35 different states represented, and There's now a PlayFast store on the Baker side. I put the link up on my Twitter, but I think right now they just have a long sleeve shirt, a short sleeve shirt, a hoodie, pair of shorts. I think a woman's t-shirt. I don't think they put the backpack on there right now, but what I'm kind of hoping for in the future, I've had so many different people at times ask about PlayFast gear, and my YouTube channel has a store that's tied to the company that YouTube works with, Teespring, and I kind of made my own shirts and leggings and phone cases and things like that for the YouTube store. But I've had so many people at different times that have asked me about PlayFast gear and PlayFast hats, and it's one of those deals where I'm not in the apparel world like that, so for me to create apparel and then ship it out of my house would be kind of pointless because I'd have to upcharge it so much to cover the shipping costs that it wouldn't be feasible for everybody to to buy a $15 or $20 hat for 35 or $40, or to buy a $20 shirt for $45 or $40, whatever, just so I cover the priority mail or the shipping. So I'd never really been in the apparel world, and then all the work we started doing with Dome with the giveaways, and we had extra boonies or bucket hats, whatever you want to call them. We had extra from the clinic, so they had inventory to kind of give some away, and and then the backpack was something that I told the sporting goods company sells Dome hats also, and it's a local company here in Northeast Florida, and they saw the one video that we did with Dome, and that it generated 30,000 views, and the owner of the company saw it and saw how many times it popped up on his timeline. And so we started talking to them about it. And I just kind of told them, look, you got to have something that you give away. The question of the day is good. I think a lot of people appreciate answering in a time like this to keep their mind off some other things, and just to kind of get whatever football you can get. But, at the end of the day, it's all about the prize and the giveaway. So, when we did a custom 12 dozen hats for a football staff that you can build online with Dome. That video obviously did the most. And then when we do the backpack, obviously it does most in the, just a generic Play Fast Boonie hat giveaway. And some of the questions have been really good. Some of them have been not so great, but it's kind of hard to come up with 35 to 40 different questions, a question every day for the last 35 to 40 days. It's kind of hard to, you placed an order with Dome hats, you're saying, Coach? Everything they do is custom, so it takes them 30 to 35 days or something like that. That's the only. It's not so much an issue, but that's the great part about Dome is everything they do is custom. But the bad part is with everything being custom, it takes longer. And then obviously, in the day and age of what's going on right now with the coronavirus, it's going to take even longer. So it's a little bit different than dealing with a Richardson or a company like that where they have a lot of stuff stock. That you can just put your logo on a stock hat. With Dome being custom, it's a great feature. And then you build your hat online, which is a tremendous feature, and it's what kind of sets them apart. But it just takes a little bit long sometimes because you are doing it custom. And then I know them and some other companies I work with have been having issues because their factories are in places that have been completely locked down. So, um, I think everybody has to be understanding about that, and kind of appreciate that if they have anything in stock, it's probably not custom. Yeah, the ability to customize is amazing. The Coaches dozen where you're getting 12 hats for $12 a piece is absolutely amazing. When you can get a custom hat for $12, and then you can get 12 of them for your staff or anybody else you want. I mean, I don't know how you're going to beat that deal where you're going to go and get a custom hat that you can build yourself with your own team colors and your logo, generate, build the hat yourself, and then get 12 of those hats for $12 a piece. I don't see a better deal out there. I know I work with Dome, and obviously I'm a mouthpiece for Dome. But yeah, you're welcome, Ruben, and thank you guys for tuning in. The live chat is just me in front of the camera talking. If you guys don't tune in and participate and ask questions, so I thank you very much, Ruben, for participating. But obviously, I work for Dome and some other companies, and we're partners, and I'm a mouthpiece for them and a spokesperson for them. So obviously, I'm a little bit biased, but to be able to generate your own hat and custom build it the way you want with different hat styles, and go from a curved bill to a straight bill, from a flex fit to an A fit to a to a true fitted hat to a Velcro hat to a snapback, and it's just it makes it, as a head coach, it makes it worthwhile to be able to design your own stuff on the computer, and rather than have somebody come in your office, then you got to design it and hope it comes out the way you want, and you don't really know how it's going to look. So the hat builder, you go online and you generate the hat, you see how it looks, you see if you like it or not. You put your logo on there, you put any writing on there. Like this was an all-star hat that they did. So, in the back, you get the stitching on the back. This is a Velcro hat, but you get the stitching on the back, and then you get some custom stitching on the side. So, um, so overall, obviously, I appreciate the company and I appreciate everything they've done for us. So, enough business. Let's get into some football, Coach. Uh, Matthew, you've got to find a local junior high, a high school, a Pop Warner. You got to find somebody that you can volunteer with. You've got to sell yourself to a coach. You've got to be willing to work at the bottom level first, and um, you've got to get in at a place first as a volunteer and do whatever it can, even if it means film or whatever you need to do. You start at the bottom, you work your way up, you prove your value to the staff, and then you know you grow as a coach. You learn more. You get on YouTube. You get on social media. You follow everything you can follow. You watch as many videos and as many clinics as you can, and you volunteer your time, and then you work your way up from there. That's if you're getting it, if you're getting into it outside of the coaching world and you never had a coaching job, or you didn't GA or do anything in college, you have to get in somewhere and you have to prove your worth to somebody, and then once you do that, you just continue to kind of climb your way up the ladder. But now that we got 20 some odd people in here, let's see if we can get some actual football talk schemes. You're welcome, Matt. Or Matthew, I'm sorry. See if we can get into some actual schemes, some X's and O's, and great place to talk it, because everything we talk about here is all theoretical, and I can give you answers on what we do, and you can ask me questions on what we do or what you do or how you would do it. And the great thing on a YouTube platform is it's all theoretical. It's whatever we want it to be. I'll always give you straightforward answers of how we do certain things, but this is the place to discuss. This is the place to ask questions. Thank you, David. This is a place, if you've got any ideas you want to try, you can ask, and I'll tell you if I've tried it or not, or what's good about it or bad about it, or if you don't know what split field coverages are, there's a place, it's a great place to start. Or any questions about football per se. There's not a question pretty much on here. If it's a straightforward, generic question and not somebody trying to troll the conversation, I'll answer anything to the best of my ability. If I've done it, I'll tell you. If I haven't done it, I'll tell you what I think or what I know about it. So fire away with anything you got. Yeah, that's one way to do it, Rock. If you're gonna change it up and play a little bit of man of what you think the RPO side is, that's one way to do it. If you stay split field coverages or you stay in zone, one of the things you got to do to the side you think is going to be RPO, you got to kind of gap exchange some linemen and move them around a little bit so that your guys in coverage can hang a little bit longer in coverage. So, man is one way to do it, but you don't always want to get locked into having to play man. Yeah, we are mostly split field versus 3-by-1, so we're going to play the trips. We're going to go in with two main theories that we carry. One is strong to the trip side. One is strong to the single side. So our first adjustment is stronger to the single side. We're always going to leave a backside safety to the single side so that we can get 2 for 1 or 3 for 2, depending on where the back is over there. And we can change up the look on the single receiver. So we can play the safety down, corner over the top, corner down, safety over the top. We can play that guy man with help from the safety. We can kind of play we can kind of play a cone theory where we kind of bracket it to where if he releases inside, the safety plays it, and the corner kind of hangs off and has to become a force player or an extra player in the run game. Or if that guy releases outside, then the safety kind of poaches back inside and becomes an extra player. So we like starting that way 3-by-1. And then my next adjustment is a clouded or a kicked coverage to the trip. So now we can kind of spot drop underneath 3, underneath 2, and underneath 1, so that if they're beating us and with spacing theories or things that we can't handle to the trips, now we can kind of roll that way. I would say anybody that can go 12 personnel and add 2 tight ends, which add 2 gaps in there, and 12 personnel 2-by-2, 12 personnel 3-by-1 closed. If they're a good inside outside zone team or a quarterback run team and they can add 2 gaps and then a lead blocker with 1 back there, to me that's the toughest to defend. Michael, we play all the same. How you doing, buddy? I haven't talked to you in a long time. We play all the same things out of our split field, out of the stack, as we do when we were 4-2-5. So none of our adjustments really change. As far as setting that hard edge, our if we're playing our mixed coverage and we can't rely on our down safety to be a force player because he is walked out kind of playing palms outside of number 2, then we've got to kind of kick our backers that way a little bit. Biggest thing we try to do when we kick the backers a little bit is we try not to change the reads for the 6 guys in the box. That's why we went to the 3-3 stack. So if I kick that stack linebacker out about, maybe a yard or 2 just outside the hip of that defensive end, I still want him to read the tackle. I still want him to be a B-gap fitter, depending on the blocks he gets. If he gets – if we get a down block or a power scheme, then we're going to spill it out to him. So it's not as hard to set the edge, but sometimes it's a little bit tougher to get that hard edge out of that mix theory. Your backer's got to be able to do it because you can't count on your down safety doing it because he's technically becomes like a corner and palm. So you really can't count him as a force player. So, we usually do it that way. If it's a tray set with a tight end to that side, we'll probably go some type of stress and take the backside safety over, towards that backside A gap to play 3 vertical and then be extra in the run game. And then we can play the down safety in between 2 and 3 so we can set the edge a little bit different. But we're different than some other people in the stack. We don't break the stack very often. We plus or minus the backers a little bit, but we try not to change their reads and their run fits. I just got tired of making adjustments and run fits changing and guys read, you put the mic all of a sudden in a position where he's outside the box and you're asking him to read the triangle instead of his normal reads from inside the box. I think that becomes a little bit different. And then if the run fits change, that becomes different. So, for us, we don't make a lot of adjustments out of the stack. I'm going to play my same split field theories. I'm going to plus or minus the backers a little bit and try and stay as home base as possible so we can fit runs the same. 4-by-1 adjustment, it's going to be very hard to stay split field with 4 receivers over there. You're going to have to take somebody, probably that backside safety, and play him over to the front side somehow to defend 4 vertical. But if it's a set where, it's if it's 4-by-1 and everybody's eligible, then you got to defend them all. If it's some type of unbalance where somebody's ineligible, then you might be able to stay split field and leave a safety backside. But 4-by-1 is going to be extremely hard to stay split field. But if it's empty and you got a backer over there in a corner, now you can still get 2 for 1, at least underneath and over that single receiver because they don't have a back there. Thank you for all you've done, Michael, and hopefully I'll see you at some clinics in the future. Still 4-2-5, still in North Carolina, Mike? David, I hope that answers your question. 4-by-1 is extremely tough to stay split field when they really load the one side like that. So normally we would have to take a backside and use somebody from the backside. The strong side, either single side or trips, is that based off? Well, the strong side for us, passing strength wise, the strong side for us is always going to be the side with more receivers. So unless it's 2-by-2 balance, they've got to come out in either 2-by-1 or 3-by-1 or 3-by-2 or 4-by-1. So there's almost always going to be a passing strength for us that we can find. So we dictate the strength of the formation, the passing strength, as far as us setting our coverages. We dictate the passing strength to most receivers. And then when we were 4-2-5, we'd set the front six on their own, or at least the front and the two backers in the box on their own, and the passing strength and the run strength could be different. It's called divorce front theories. So when we were 4-2-5, we were a divorce front team. We don't have to set the front anymore in our 3-3 stack. So it's really just the guys on the back end declaring the passing strength and where the free safety is going to go and then what coverages we want to play from there. We played a little bit of tight rock last year. Haven't played per se the mint front stuff yet, but we played a little bit of tight. It's kind of easy for us in the 3-3 stack, because once we go to tight with four eyes, they become B gap players, and then the stacks become C gap players. So we kind of, their normal read would be off of each other, and they would be B, C gap players depending on the block that they get. So they would each play the B or C gap. When we move them to four eyes, it makes it kind of, we've already predetermined the gaps that they're playing. So we keep it as simple as we can. When we go to tight front, we don't get crazy with it and try not to change the reads, try not to change the run fits. But it was okay to us at times last year. Didn't do it a lot. Probably need to do it more, to be honest, Rock, this year, and studied a little bit of the mint stuff, but haven't played it really, so I can't talk a lot about it. All right, Bogan, we had better 3-3 stack personnel. We had more linebackers than we did D linemen. We had more hybrid safety types than we did D linemen. So we wanted to stay with a 5-spoke secondary, 3 safety stuff, and stumble across something 2 years ago at a clinic with some run fits and reads in a 3-3 stack from a junior college guy who was talking about how they have to keep it very simple because they only get players for 2 years, and a lot of those guys got to play for them right away. So it's hard for them to put in a crazy detailed system with a lot of changes in reads, keys, and run fits because they don't have the guys very long. And it was a very simple presentation, one of the best presentations I've ever seen. It seemed almost too simple and too good to be true. We went to it, and our run fits have been a lot better. There are some, obviously you're playing with 2 bubbles, which is a little bit scary. There are some issues with some reads, but we were able to keep our same coverages and go to the 3-3 stack. And it's a lot easier for me to coach my coaches, and it's a lot easier for my coaches to coach when I'm not around. If I'm on offense or somewhere else, it's a lot easier for them to fix things because the reads are so generic and simple. Thank you, Lewis. Bogan, getting back to you. I think the stack can be different at times. Anytime you're odd, I think that's a little bit different. I think there's way more 4-2-5 or even front teams than there are true odd teams. The stack gives everybody that you're playing a little bit something different to look at every week. We need to be different. We're not most of the time we're either as talented or less talented than the teams we play. So we certainly need to be different on paper. And then obviously it builds itself into a whole bunch of movements and stunts and pressures, which I like. So when we were a 4-2-5 team, we always had a stack package that we carried. And we did it a little bit different than most teams, but we always had a stack package that we carried because we liked it a lot on passing downs, because we can present several looks to the offense without really changing the look for us on defense, without creating new calls. So that would be the advantages. Disadvantages, sometimes tight end stuff, it becomes a little bit funky when you're not really playing true 7 techniques or 8 or 9 techniques on a tight end. You're kind of staying with your 3-3 stack box, and then your safeties are making the adjustments. So tight end, pro eye stuff, which luckily we don't see a lot of, but pro eye stuff or 21 personnel twin stuff can be a little bit bad at times, but we see more spread stuff, so it's not as bad for us. But being different is good. Creating different looks for the offense is good. Double bubbles or 2 open B gaps is not always the greatest, and tight end stuff, it's not always the greatest. Yeah, I've always been split field my entire career. It's how I learned the game. I learned in a quarter, half, 3-4 under defense front when I was in college. So I learned to play under defense, and I learned to play quarter, half. So been a split field guy pretty much my whole life, and never really been a single high guy. So um, it's good to hear that, Ruben. I like split field coverage. I like split field guys, and there's a place for one high. It's just not the world that I know a ton about as far as um, coaching it, whatnot. We have some things where we close the middle of the field, but I'm not a one high guy, so I can talk to you a little bit about things we do. But I'm a split field guy, so that's where I learned. It's where I cut my teeth, and it's where I'm most comfortable. So now we manipulate the nose every snap. We tried when we first putting it in, two gap in the nose and letting the mic play off him. We tried lagging the nose behind the center, playing behind all the blocks of the center and letting the mic play over that. And with the types of kids that I have, it was just a little bit too much to ask. And we had some fire plug noses that were 180, 185-pound wrestlers that we needed to move anyway. So we manipulate the A gap based on what the mic calls, based on where the back is. And sometimes, even if we get it wrong, as long as the mic fits the other A gap, the mic and the nose kind of work hand in hand. The mic and the nose for us work hand in hand, kind of plugging A gap on out for the mic. So as long as we manipulate the nose one way or the other, that gives the mic his primary A gap and then the reads that he needs to make. And then we got to fit things off of that. So yes, Michael, we manipulate the nose pretty much every down. Yeah, I can see where four verts could be an issue versus one high, but to me, I think depending on how you coach it and depending on how good your free safety and your corners are, I think you can overlap some things and force the ball on a different trajectory and give your guys a chance to break on it. So four verts seems to be the flavor of the moment. It always seems to be big with air raid guys, but I'm going to be honest with you, on defense, four verts is one of the least amount of passes that's ever completed on us. I guess because we're split field, it helps, but I just don't think there's a lot of I don't think there's a lot of high schools and quarterbacks that spend enough time on four verts and all the variations of it. So if you're going to be 2 by 2 and throw four verts against us, you're always going to have to throw the bender, or you're going to have to throw comeback routes or check it down to the back because the way we play with safeties, we have good matchups and we have stand ups over your stand ups, and so you're never really going to get us in a bind unless we're spinning to one high for whatever reason. But a lot of our one high is man free, so four verts for me is really not. It's not something that we struggle with, and that's probably more because there's some teams out there and some guys out there that are really good with four verts with good quarterbacks, and they'll beat every coverage they see and they rep it a bunch. But I'd go in every day of the week knowing that four verts for us isn't that big of an issue. I think the trend for everybody, Bogan, is even fronts. I think even fronts are easier to coach. I was an even front guy myself. After the 3-4 under front reduction stuff, we went to even front and just typical 3 and a 5 or a 3 and a 7 versus a tight end, and it was real easy to coach. It was real kind of plug and play, and I think that's good in high school when you see a lot of offenses from week to week. I think plug and play is really good, and I think the over front. It's a little bit more efficient that way. At the same time, I think every offensive coordinator in the country can block an over front or an even front. So I think odd fronts make it a little bit tougher. But I've said this for 20 years, and I'm going to stick to it. I think you need to be a better coach with a better coaching staff to play odd stuff, at least 3-4 stuff. Maybe not 3-3 stack as much, but good 3-4 teams need to be coached really well, and they have to understand where they're trying to send the fourth from and what they're trying to do in coverage and how they line up to different fronts and things like that. So I think odd, 3-4 and odd teams have to be really, really well coached. Obviously, I think they're tougher for offenses. I think they're tougher to block. I think they're tougher to game plan for. But I also think they're tougher to coach, which is strictly my opinion. Nobody's ever told me that. I didn't get that from a clinic. It's just my opinion from doing both odd and even stuff. I think the even becomes more plug and play week to week, and it's easier, at least in my opinion. I think it's easier with even front stuff to play multiple formations and still fit things kind of similar. The only time we break the stack is when we go to either bear front or some of our pressure stuff. We'll break the stack a little bit, but as far as the base coverage, we do not break the stack. So if you come out in a tray formation, you're going to see 3-3 stack, and then depending on the coverage, you're either going to see that strong safety apex between 2 and 3. You might see him outside 2. You might see the backers plus over to the trip side a little bit, but we We do not break the stack. We do not change. If you see us change, we're either slanting and angling and playing man free, or we're in some type of bear. One of our answers, two answers for us right away, when we see trace sets is we either move the front and play man free, which then we will put the safety that's playing man to man on a tight end inside eye to tight end, and we'll bring the pressure from outside of tight end and then move to an even front. So at the snap of the ball, it would look like an old fashioned um, over front with a tight end vice, kind of like the old Florida State, one high robber stuff, and starts as two high and two safeties that are extra in the run game, and then they spin to create a low hole rat and a high hole rat. So that's one of the first things we do, and then we go bear right away and double three techniques and vice a guy on the tight end and play man free from bear. So that's one of the um, that's one of the things we do when we see tight ends. Tight stack versus triple has been our go-to. It's a huge selling point. Tight front is the easiest. Yeah, we drop 8 as our base all the time. We don't count the mic in any of our coverages. The reason we do that is because when I eliminate the mic from the coverages, it leaves me the same teaching principles and teaching philosophies I had when I was 4.25 on the back end. So without the mic in the coverages, we don't have to change anything. I say we drop 8, but the mic is really a spy on the quarterback. So he's kind of like a low hole rat, fourth rusher, add-on rusher. 5 techniques can get two-way goes because if the quarterback leaves the pocket, the mic is a secondary contained guy that's got to pull the quarterback up. So we drop 8, but the mic's really not involved in the coverages. We have some stuff we do at times where we drop 8 with using the mic as a middle hole player, but most of the time he's just a rat or an extra guy on the QB. So we can keep all our coverage principles and all our teaching principles the same. Yes, I agree that the stack to some triple stuff, obviously they kind of makes their reads a little bit easier at times, but they got an arc release on the 4 now or whatever they try to do if they want to read him, and he gets a little bit closer to to the veer play if they're going to arc release. If they're going to down block him, you're going to force the ball to go a little bit wider. But the main thing with triple option is keep your responsibility simple and take away their best player. Defense controls who gets the ball on an option scheme. I don't think the option quarterback dictates who gets the ball. Personally, I think the defense does, and then you make the quarterback do what you want him to do after that. So, yes, he is riding and deciding who ends up with the football, but I think the defense ultimately dictates where the football goes in the option game. So make your assignments easy. Have it change up so it's not the same thing, but make your assignments easy, and you dictate where they go based on who their best players are. Yeah, 3-4 with outside backers up is pain in the ass. Old 5-2 football, especially if they got guys that can play man. When we bring 5 rock, mostly my philosophy with the 3-3 stack is I want to blitz the backers and coverage the safeties more. We do some stuff off the field side edge with some of the safeties, but we're not a huge safety fire team just because I like to play to my personnel. So I like to blitz my backers because they're better blitzers, and I like to cover with my safeties because they're better cover guys. So if we bring a safety, it's usually more in a 6-man deal. Maybe we'll come with a field side pressure, bringing 2 off the edge with the safety and play hot behind it, or might play some man-free peel coverage, or we play a bunch of straight 0-2. So I like blitzing my backers and covering with my safeties. Michael, most of our pressures would probably come from inside the C gap with crossfires from the stack backers and different variations of what might look like a double plug or a double A gap pressure because we've got 3 backers coming, but we do some stuff with guys off the edge. But I think if I had to say honestly, within our blitz package, I would say 60 to 70% of our blitzes come from inside the C gaps, and they come from the stack backers. If you 2-gap 3-4, it's really difficult. It's not difficult to teach linemen. It's difficult to teach backers. I think it's difficult because there's a lot of formation adjustments based on what you need to do. And I think, at least for us, a lot of times in our reduction front, we might be spending time making sure we have every front covered, and you got to have a guy that's walked out as an apex player, but he's got to be able to play a 9 technique, which is tough. And then, if you're straight, odd, okie, whatever you want to call it, and you're, 0-4-0, or, you're head up on the center, head up on the tackles, and your outside linebackers are kind of the guys that make adjustments to tight ends. That's probably not as difficult. But if you're a reduction team and, you got to start talking about formation into the boundary, and formation into the boundary for us was an issue because we used to be a field team, and So we'd end up formation into the boundary versus an over front ends up, versus a reduction field front ends up looking like an over front. You play a 3 and a 7 to that side. And having an outside linebacker playing a 7 technique was also a little bit of a bitch. So um, I just feel like the 3-4 has more moving parts. I mean, I think that's why it's more difficult for offenses. And I think anytime you have more moving parts, I think it's a little bit more difficult to coach. That's just, again, that's 100% opinion. That is not from any gurus. That is not from any college guys. I just think 3-4 has more moving parts and it's tougher to coach. If we bring five, we are either playing three under, three deep, four under, two deep, or man, some version of man free. If we bring six, we are playing. Um, if we bring six, we're usually playing hot, two under, three deep, or we're playing straight zero, or we're peeling and playing man free with a different post player. Maybe it could be a high post player, it could be a low post player. It just kind of depends on what we're trying to do. But if we're bringing five or six, we three under, three deep, four under, two deep, man free, and then two under, three deep, and either zero or zero peel stuff is what we do. We do not send five and play our base coverages. That's just me. That's something I know you could probably get away with sending five and playing split field coverages, but I think there's some teaching involved in that for us. So when we bring five, we just change the coverage. That makes it easier for us. Does your school play a cover two to the bound? We do not play any 3 and 2 combinations. No, we do not. We'll play our split field two read to the field and cover two to the boundary. If it's 21 personnel, we might play quarters to the field and cover two to the boundary, but we do not play any three deep to the field and two to the boundary. I do not. It depends on where the ball is going to be snapped. If it's jet motion and it hasn't changed the formation and that guy has not crossed the line of scrimmage, we usually handle it with an apex player walking up to the side of the jet. And if the ball snapped while he's on the other side of the quarterback, that apex player is looking to kind of come up and make jet action an issue. If that guy gets across the formation, now we've got to kind of, if it stays in motion, we've got to readjust our declaration on who's who. And the swing deep a three player now has to know that motion guy becomes a swing deep a three, not the back. So we sometimes the free safety will, depending on where the motion's going or coming from, sometimes the free safety will change sides and declare a new coverage on that side. Sometimes we spin to three deep, but my biggest key for you, my biggest pet peeve in coaching is with any type of motions, handle it as simple as possible, because I guarantee if you go back and you scout all the teams that you saw that use motion and all the things that gave you trouble, I would be willing to bet you, like myself, you're probably one of those people who spent way more time trying to handle motions than you did actually seeing motions. So the be simple with your motion adjustments. That's my biggest coaching point or pet peeve. I hate guys that have 9 million adjustments to motion, and then the kids don't know if it's jet motion, cross the field motion, orbit motion. So we only change if it's a change of formation or a change of strength. And a lot of times we'll actually spin and play three deep a bunch of motions because I think it's the easiest. And I think we also, when you're blitzing, that's another look that'll be different emotions. And then when you're playing man free, that's another look. So I think if you spin to three deep and then you have blitzes and pressures, I think that's enough answers to motion. If it's an actual trade or a shift and we have time, if they're going to set themselves and change the strength, then our free safety will just go from a rip to a Liz or a Liz to a rip, and he'll just redefine the coverage if it's a trade that we have time. We play with hybrid safeties, so both my safeties have to be strong safeties and weak safeties. And the reason we do that is because we got traded a bunch when I was originally a 4-2-5 field team, and that safety that was away from the strength, when he got a tight end to his side, he really didn't know how to play it. We couldn't play a lot of the same coverages, so we got away from that and started playing with hybrid safety. So our down safeties now have to be able to play to the strength and away from the strength. So if we get a team that kind of trades a tight end, both our safeties are equipped to handle it. So we'll just take the free safety from a rip or a Liz, change the call, and then re-identify what the coverage is on the new side. A lot of times our safeties will go with inside run to create that 8-man box. So I'm sorry, 8-man front, 6-man box. if we play a lot of 8-man front stuff with the down safeties being overhangs, then we will send them with inside run. A lot of times our inside run might just be with the 6 in the box so that we can fit up, get as many reps with them on their reads with between the nose and the mic and in between the stacks and the ends. But we will send the safeties down there. Safeties are usually involved more in team run period. Obviously, I know that's a blatant answer, but just because of RPOs and things like that, that we can't do an inside run. So I'd rather use the safeties more in our team run periods. But yes, there are times, especially earlier in the season, where we need safeties down so that we can teach, so that the stacks and the ends, and when we're going to spill the ball, so that those guys can see the benefits of spilling the ball. A lot of times, if you don't bring your safeties to inside run and you spill the ball and there's nobody out there, your kids think it's wrong because there's nobody to make the tackle, and then you got to explain to them that there'll be safeties out there. So, yes, Michael, we do use them in 7-on-7 or inside run. Sorry, early in the season, 9-on-7, but we don't use them all the time. If it's to the passing strength side, Rock, we would maybe possibly go to quarters, depending on the tight split of 1 and 2. If 2 gets a really tight split, we won't play our 2 read stuff. We'll go to more quarters and put the apex outside leverage of 2. If it's a really tight split between 1 and 2, we'll probably make some type of box zone adjustment where the down safety will take the first to the flat, free safety or the high safety will take the first up and in, and the corner or whoever that is will take the first up and out. So kind of a zebra adjustment or a box adjustment to where you make it as simple as possible. So I think bunch sets are the same. I think you have to have answers to the bunch, but I think if you game plan or go back and self-scout yourself and see how many times you saw condensed splits and bunches, I think the easier you make it on yourself, the better. You spend a lot of time worrying about it, and then you don't see it a lot, and you end up chasing ghosts. So tight split by 2, we'll go to quarters. Tight split by 1 and 2, we'll go to some type of box or zone theory, make it as easy as possible. I think as an offensive guy, condensed splits and tight bunches is something we need to do a little bit more of and a little bit better job of, and create better angles in the run game, get the ball to bounce out the corners that usually don't want to tackle people, and then create some issues in the passing game. I think the problem with tight splits from an offensive standpoint is when you go to run your regular passing game, your kids have to understand how to stem to get back on the landmark that they need to be. So I think sometimes receivers will get in a stack or a bunch set and they'll run their routes the same way you taught them out of generic regular base splits, and then you don't get the spacing on the field you want. So when you're going to condense the splits or go bunches or things like that, I think your kids have to understand how to stem their routes to get back somewhat near the original landmark that you had set up for the spacing of the play so that you can create proper horizontal east-west or the spacing or the proper high-low that you need. So I think that's one of the reasons you don't see it as much on offense. Yeah, David, I don't know if that's good or bad, but this is the dude. The dude abides. But yeah, this is that same guy, I believe, unless you've been watching a different YouTube channel. It's got to be good if you've been watching since 2014 and haven't unsubscribed yet. What else we got? Thank you, Michael. Take care. What do you guys go ahead and type in the chat box? What do you guys play on defense, and then what coverages do you base out of? Are you a one high or a split field team? Let's start figuring out what everybody plays, and then maybe I can kind of pick your brain a little bit, or I can learn from you, or we can kind of go back and forth and discuss maybe the pluses and the minuses of each one. Are there any Any 3-3 stack guys out there? If so, do you move every down? Are you a one high team? Are you the standard version of 3-3 stack? Do you do it different? You're welcome, Bogan. You didn't steal it, you borrowed it, Klinger. That's what football and coaching is all about. It's just borrowing ideas. You're never really stealing it. Slant and angle 50 front stuff or two gap straight old Okie base odd stuff. Weak side reduction stuff. Is there a guy coming off the weak side edge, or do you send a fourth, or do you just rush three? And this is an interesting question for you because I've done videos on this before. What is your version of cover four? I'd like to hear that answer, and answer it however you feel is appropriate, because I'm not here to agree or disagree with it. I have my own opinion, but when I hear people say cover four, I always get a little bit confused. Do they mean a four across type deal, or are they actually pattern matching with two safeties and playing more of a quarters? Three back power for us, Klinger, is going to be our normal 8-man front. We're going to play our normal eight. Both hybrid safeties will be down, and then a free safety if we can get a feel for the set, and he can play one of those backs as his kind of quarters read for a vertical responsibility or a run fit responsibility. Obviously, we're going to try and get 9 in the box as quick as we can. So corners are probably going to be on an island if it's 30 personnel, or if it's 31 or 32, then we might have to make some adjustments here or there. But normally we want to be in our 8-man front stuff, 3-3 box as much as we can, and then we want to get the free safety to be the extra player adding in if it's 3 back power. Willie, you spot dropping those guys, or are you trying to play Ripley as pattern match at the junior high level? Wing T stuff, depending on what they're trying to run and how many formations they get out of it, we'll have kind of a wing adjustment to our quarter stuff. We'll maybe we might bring one of our stack backers up there and kind of bring him between the tight end and the wing and play cover 2 behind it, and kind of void an area a little bit where we're playing cover 2 with a corner, a safety, and a down safety in the hook zone to that tight end wing, and into the backside single. We play all our generic coverages usually. You got to volunteer somewhere, Danny, at a local junior high, middle school, Pop Warner team, high school team. You got to volunteer somewhere first, get your name in the hat somehow, and do whatever jobs it may be, equipment, film, whatever you got to do first. And then you got to get your foot in the door first. So the first thing to do is volunteer or try and help somewhere, get your foot in the door, and then work your way up from there. It's going to be tough if you have no previous coaching experience or you really don't know that many people. The hardest door is that first one to open. Once you open that first one, if you do a good job, other doors will open, but that first one is always the toughest. Fourth degree polynomials. I don't think I can solve those. I like the cowboy hat deal, though. That makes sense. Keep the mic free. That makes sense. four to a side depends on the original coverage we're trying to play. We're usually going to have to involve the backside safety, bringing him over to probably play a four vertical at some point or another. Depends on what they try to do out of four to a side. But if it's our normal trips coverage, then it'll probably be our normal trips coverage with a backside safety coming over to handle that number four vertical. Try not to do anything that's going to put a stack or a Mike linebacker on a four vertical. But 4x1 is kind of bastardized, so I think sometimes you got to bastardize your defense a little bit because it's a set that you don't really see a bunch of. Yeah, Willie, it's for me. It's always surprising to hear people when they talk about playing four across or playing cover four. It's always something that gets a little bit confusing because we don't play any four across or anything. We play quarters. So when people say cover four, it kind of freaks me out a little bit because I don't know what they're talking about. I always try to talk to our middle school coaches. We don't have a main feeder, so I can't really tell them what to run. But to me, as a middle school coach, I think for me at least, teaching spot drop cover two, spot drop cover three, and then man concepts. You give the kids the best of kind of every world. You teach them two different zone theories and how that spot or the landmark might change. And then you teach them a middle of the field open concept, middle of the field closed concept. You teach them how to play man. You teach them how their reads might change based on the zone concept to the man concept. You teach them the difference between low hats and high hats. I mean, I think if you, to me as a high school head coach, if you're getting that done at the junior high level, I would appreciate it a bunch. We don't need to. We don't need to. We don't need those guys playing pattern match unless you want to teach it. We don't need to worry about pattern match. To me, it would be spot drop cover two, spot drop cover three, and then some man free or some man stuff. And then the kids have the best of pretty much every world. And then when they get to us, we can teach them how to kind of more advanced pattern match, just like our kids, when they get to college, their pattern match is going to be a lot more advanced than ours is. Right now, Chad, it's probably a lot of body weight stuff. We just put some agility drills and stretching drills for our kids to do up in a Google Classroom on Monday. I really couldn't tell you exactly what it looks like. I have not sent out any workouts to the kids because I have no idea what equipment they might have. So we just put some agility drills and some flexibility stretching drills and then some body weight strength drills because we have no idea. We have no idea what equipment those kids have access to. So to put a workout on a board, to use our regular Olympic lifts or any of that other stuff, triple joint extension stuff, I don't think it makes sense because I don't know what they have access to. Yeah, I agree, Willie. You have limited time, limited coaching staff. Those kids have a limited knowledge of football, so pattern match becomes a little bit of an issue. So I like the way you're doing it. I agree 100% with how you're doing what you're doing. Danny, I'm not going to tell you exactly what major, but you better think about being a teacher if you want to coach football because it's going to be there aren't a lot of jobs out there unless you work crazy hours or you are independently wealthy and own your own business. There are not a lot of hours that are conducive to coaching football. So anything you can do to become a teacher, if it's an education major, fine. If it's a major in another field and then you get a teaching certificate, fine. But if you want to coach football for a living at the high school level or junior high level, I think you better be a teacher. That's tough, Coach Lucci, because I would kill to have a feeder that's a true feeder and those junior high guys coming up to me and asking me for advice. All you can do is keep reaching out for whatever reason. If you're a true feeder to them and they don't want to help, I really don't know what to tell you because I would be killing for a junior high feeder that feeds me and those junior high or middle school coaches with coming up to talk with me about what we would like them to do. I would love to have that situation, and we don't have it, and it frustrates me that somebody has it and isn't willing to get involved. That's kind of frustrating to me. Yeah, maybe you haven't, but maybe you have, Coach Lucci. I don't know. Maybe the guy just doesn't want to be involved. I can't speak for him. I don't know what the situation is, but whether it be formations, fronts, or coverages, or terminology. Or biggest thing to me at that level is you got to teach kids how to block and tackle, and you got to teach them how to read blocks, and you got to teach them how to get off of blocks. You got to teach block destruction, and then on offense, you got to teach blocking schemes. You can't just teach block somebody. That's not a good run concept to me. Depends on what we're playing over there, Coach O'Malley. Um, if it's the corner that's to the if it's the corner that's to the tight end wing side, then it depends on the coverage adjustments we're making. We might be playing hard cover two over there. Uh, we've tried at times to play quarters to the tight end wing and have the corner and the safety match the routes of the tight end wing. So the safety's got the first up and in, the corner's got the first up and out, but they get so close to each other with depths and splits that we really didn't like it. So a lot of times, tight end wing will probably, whether it's a stack back or a down safety or somebody, we might roll somebody up on that tight end wing and kind of force the issue, make the wing block down so we can't get to our other backers inside, eat up that block of the wing, and then play kind of a rolled cover two behind it. Yeah, to the tight end wing, it just depends on what we're trying. If it's base and we have there's sometimes some games we'll have a tight end depending on what they're doing. We'll have a tight end wing adjustment and we go right to that solid adjustment or whatever it may be, and we're going to get somebody coming in between the tight end and the wing, and we're going to roll and play cover two behind that, depending on how efficient they are in the passing game to the tight end wing side. If it's base, like I said, we've tried to play base quarters to it, but wasn't always the greatest for us. They're a little bit too tight and too close to each other. The original reason we tried to play base quarters was we thought that we can get an extra fitter from the corner. If you're playing, if you're playing all of one except shallow cross and you're playing two vertical and you're keying off those guys and they are both in the box and they put their hands on people, you would think that the corner and the safety are extra in the run game. So that's one of the reasons we originally tried to play our normal defense to it. But a lot of times that doesn't work for us. So we've got to kind of bastardize what we're doing to the tight end wing side. And we've had some success with some man free stuff, getting a guy right up in the tight end's face and getting a guy kind of couple yards off the wing and then bringing a guy from outside the wing to make that tight end block that C gap player down and then, try to get extra bodies in and around the box. But I think more guys should probably go wing T because we don't see a lot of wing T and it causes a few issues for us here and there. But, luckily we don't see it a lot. So it's usually some type of game plan adjustment. I try the best I can not to break the 3-3 stack with our guys because I want us to fit runs the same. So I try everything I can to stay as tight to that 3-3 box theory as I can. Yeah, double wing's an issue. Double wing's an issue if they're 3 yards in a cloud of dust and they have some option theories in there. Double wing can become an issue, but I think it also becomes an issue for the offense because they kind of become very one-dimensional. I think if the team is more talented than you are, tight end double wing stuff or tight end wing to each side is probably a little bit of an issue. But in my opinion, if it was that big of an issue, I think you'd see it more. I think you'd see more teams going tight end wing to each side. I think you'd see NFL teams do it, and I don't think you see a lot of it at the next level. So it's got to be somewhat limiting. 11 personnel, 4-2-5, two blue, kind of TCU style with the read side to the tight end side. I should open up my way backer to help. If the away side's got the twins to it, then your backer that's got to walk out a little bit to that side. If he's got the open B gap, then obviously that's the side you might get RPO'd a little bit, but he's got to walk out just because he's a swing deep a three player. Two can't cross his face, three can't out leverage him. So he's got to be bumped out a little bit wider to that side. A lot of times for us, if we're having problems in the run game to that because he's walked out, we'll just gap exchange the end. We'll tell that kid that he can make his own auto call to the end. If he's far enough removed that he can't play the B gap and the passing game at the same time and it's becoming an issue, then he can do something to kind of cancel that B gap out with the end and make himself more of a C gap fitter so he can hang wider, longer in the passing game. Now we'll lock that side. If you're worried about if you're worried about walking that guy out, depending on where the ball is, sometimes we'll lock that side man to man and leave the backer in the box, and then you got to play your end as a force player usually, not as a spill player, because you're going to lose an edge to the ball with guys playing man. So we've done that before to the away side. Yeah, if you stack the end, playing the B gap is not going to be an issue at all. But depending if the ball's on the middle of the field and the team has good splits and you're stacking that defensive end, they're going to try and throw stand ups or bubbles and see if your corner can defend it. And then they're going to get RPO to that open B gap side. So if that's how you're playing it, most teams will set the back to the twins with the tight end flanker away from it, and then they'll run the ball at the tight end flanker side and they'll RPO that open B gap side. So got to have a few adjustments off that. For us, Coach McCullough, two vertical is anything deeper than the down safety or the apex backer or the linebacker level. So anything working vertical that is deeper than that is going to be taken by the safety. I try to make my two vertical rules as clear cut and concise as possible. I'd rather have the coverage played the proper way with the safety having to drive on an out cut and using an underneath player to help on flood stuff or out cuts than I would having miscommunication between the corner. I think yardage is tough on a field. I think telling a kid 5 yards or 7 yards is very tough on a field. It is for me at least. So I think deeper than linebacker for us, at least. Again, this is just me speaking. Anything deeper than linebacker working vertical, we're going to have to play with that safety and declare it as vertical. I think it makes it easier for the safety and easier for the corner. But if you went to 5 different YouTube live rooms, you can get 5 different answers on two vertical and what is two vertical. So I think once you define it clearly and concisely for your kids and you stick to those rules and you rep it, I think you can live with it as long as it's done right. But I was never a fan of yardage and I was never a fan of gray area. We want vertical to be as simple as possible. It's deeper. You can still see chest in a face mask and it's deeper than linebackers. It's vertical. We are a one gap team, so we play with shades and then based on a block we see, we'll play our gaps from there. So there's a little bit of scrape exchange and gap exchange involved, but we don't two gap any of our guys up front. Depends on the situation in the game, Willie. Depends on the score in the game. Depends on the other team. Depending on each situation is going to be played a little bit differently. Where the ball is on the field is probably going to be played a little bit differently. If it's 2 minute and they're trying to progress down the field, they're trying to progress down the field to kick a field goal or do something like that. Depending on what the score is, probably a little bit more zone pressure orientated than man pressure orientated. The ball gets closer to midfield or in your end, then we start going to more man pressure. But probably stay base coverage first, and then if we made any adjustments at all, it might be making some adjustments to kind of defend, the flood routes, the out routes, the comeback. So maybe a little bit more cover two mixed in from time to time, so those corners can kind of hang and help maybe on the flood theory. But basically keep everything inside and in front, and depending on how far they have to go or what they need to do to score points, understanding that situation, trying not to give up a home run, trying to keep the ball inside in front, and then trying to keep guys in bounds and get them on the ground is probably the biggest philosophical approach to how you handle 2 minute and 4 minute. But I would say, Willie, that that's probably more situational based. And I hate to ask a question like that on a hat giveaway on Twitter because guys would come back and ask right away what the score is, what the other team runs on offense, um, which direction the wind's blowing. Kind of a theoretical, philosophical question that all you can really do is give a philosophical answer because you're not actually in the game understanding what you're defending. So philosophically, it's keep everything inside and front, keep guys in bounds, keep the clock moving, make them use timeouts if they had to, make them spike the ball, do everything you can for them to have to stop the clock using burning a timeout or burning it down one way or the other. Again, when it comes to two gap stuff, I don't worry about it from the D line standpoint. I think two gap with D line is not terrible. And it's not hard to teach. I think two gap with linebackers and second level players is tougher to teach. And I have a hard time going from one gap to two gap. I know a lot of guys do it, but I have a hard time if our guys are one gap guys or shaded guys. I have a hard time having them go then play two gap from there. You're welcome, Willie. Hope I could. That's actually a great question that a lot of people don't philosophically talk about 2 minute and 4 minute and stuff like that. And it's one of those um, analytical, philosophical debates that you can't really answer in one setting. But the cheapest, easiest answer is inside and in front, and then depending on the situation, how much you want to pressure and what type of pressure. I always like to ask guys, you know, when I like to ask guys about their pressures and field position wise, when or where they like using their man pressures and their zone pressures, and does it change on the field when the offense is backed up in their own end, and then as they approach midfield, and then as the field shortens, does it change any? I know for us it does. I know a lot of times for us pressure wise, when the ball's on in their end and they're inside their own 30, you're going to see way more zone pressures than you would man pressures, and then as they matriculate to midfield, you'll see some more mixed in, and then as the field gets a lot shorter, depending on down and distance, then they'll really start seeing more man pressure. How was the transition to 4-5 to 3-3 stack? No, we don't always slant. We actually, our base defense, we do not move at all. So we teach our base 3-3 stack off of generic block reactions and then run fits off of those block reactions. So we don't move as a base defense. Our transition to the 3-3 the last 2 or 3 seasons now has been real good. We've been better versus the run as a 3-3 stack team. Now, I also had a Division I defensive end that was a really good player, and that helps. So it's kind of hard. It'll be interesting to see next year without that kid what we do. But our 3-3 stack for us on paper, our run fits and us against the run on paper, our numbers have been 1,000 times better out of the stack than we were in the 4-2-5. Sports management is not bad at all, or kinesiology or something like that is not bad at all. All signals rock. We signal everything. We do not use wristbands on defense. We try our initial camp rules. We try to signal everything to all 11 players on the field so that they don't have to echo or make calls. That becomes an issue. So then we end up with our free safety usually echoing the call after the signal. But our base rule of teaching from day one is all 11 guys after each play have to find the sideline and get the signal. So we have some pursuit drills and some multi scout group drills that we'll do to get our guys to go from one play to the next play while having to look for a signal and then get lined up in a tempo fashion. So we kind of drill that early on with some different drills that we have with multiple scout teams and defense. We'll put 2 scout teams about 40 yards apart from each other, one going north, one going south, or one going east, one going west, and we'll play it down versus one group, and then the defense has to run to the other side of the field. And while they're running to the other side of the field, they got to get the call. And then when they get to that side, they've got to line up and play that call. So we do a lot of work like that to get our kids orientated to it. We like 2-3 years in the 4-2-5. Guys are just now starting to really get it. Yeah, if they're just now starting to get it and the 4-2-5 is working, I don't know if I transition to it. If your 4-2-5, if your 4-2-5 is getting beat up a little bit and you don't like the way your fit and runs, or you're getting beat up first spread or in the passing game and you want to change, then by all means give it a shot. But if your kids or your players are finally starting to learn 4-2-5 stuff, I wouldn't be changing just yet. I'm just not a wristband guy personally. I think it's a lot more work during the week. You've got to have all your calls correct. I do realize that on a wristband, you could have the wristband made up where the kids' assignments for pressures and movements could be on there, and that could help. But I've been burned in the past with some wristbands and calls that change, and then you forget to change the wristband, or you change 10 positions and not the 11th position, and you wonder why a kid did something. So I'm just not the biggest fan of wristbands. I don't think it's a bad idea for offenses or defenses. A lot of teams use them. I think TCU is even a wristband team for a lot of the things they do. I'm not a wristband guy. I want to signal, and I want to force our guys to get the signal from us. And then wristbands, they got to get a signal too, or one guy's got to get a signal and then call out the color and the number on a wristband. So I'm not saying it's a terrible idea. I just don't use it. for us, it's one signal, Rock. I don't use multiple signalers. I signal the front, the coverage, the blitzes, and if we have anybody that I think is stealing our signals or they're onto our signals, then I will possibly use a dummy signaler. But anytime anybody ever talks to me about signals, um, the first answer I always give them is I don't know about the school you coach at, but where I coach, we work so hard with our signals during practice and in our games, and our kids still miss our own signals. So if somebody else is good enough to get them off of film and then teach their kids what they are or be able to yell into their kids what they are, God bless them, because we work like hell all week, all camp and all season to get our kids to be able to understand how we signal. And we have busts with our own signals where our kids don't even know, our kids get the wrong signal or run the wrong thing. So if somebody else can take our signal and they can ascertain that information and get it to their kids, and God bless them. If it's that bad and our kids are pouting about it, then we'll use a dummy signaler. But I've just never been big on signboards, never been big on multiple signalers. I've never been big on. I from an offensive standpoint, I get it how you can do some more things with shifts and trades and motions, and when you got guys that are looking at different signalers. But I've just never really been much into it, and never really been much. I'm not one of those guys that calls plays like with my play sheet over my mouth so nobody can see my mouth move. And I will say though that in the past 2 years, I've been a little bit more cognizant of what film goes out. So if we've got some longer clips where they can see signals on huddle, I might clip those out and edit those before we send the exchange. But I don't do it all the time, but sometimes I do because I know there's people out there looking for signals, but we screw up our own signals and it's what we do every day. So if the other team is better than us than we are at our own signals, and sometimes God bless if they're that much better than you. If you've watched my channel before, if you've ever heard me talk before, I hate confusion. I hate kids that overthink everything. I hate getting calls in that have to be adjusted 1,000 times, or kids have to make the call to put you in the best scenario. I hate being lined up wrong. I hate being in the wrong coverages. I want our kids to play, and I'd rather get beat with what I'm in and you knowing what I'm in and you beating it than an answer that I feel like is a better answer, but our kids either can't play it or can't line up to it, or I just can't stand living that way. It happened to me in the past. Lost some games that way, and it was just a very frustrating, ill feeling knowing that you got beat because you weren't even lined up. So I err to the side of caution and err to the side of being a little bit simpler and not multiple signals and not a signboard, none of that stuff. What else we got? Been a good one tonight. Had over 25 guys almost the whole time. A lot of good questions. Yeah, pattern match is tough. Got to make it as simple as possible. Once you teach the theory to the kids, then you got to make it as simple as possible. I think you got to make your matches as consistent and as simple as possible. I don't think you can have multiple ways to pattern match, in my opinion, with high school kids. I know there's some people out there that do it and do it very well, but I know for us, we struggled to get our kids to pattern match in our base defense. If we had another pattern match that was a variation or different, I think we'd really, really struggle teaching both. So I try not to teach them both. MIA, I don't think I would say no. I don't see a lot of true run and shoot. You might see some teams that are four wide and chuck it all over the place, but I don't think it's a run and shoot philosophy. So I don't think we see a lot of run and shoot, to my knowledge. If we see teams that are 10 personnel, 2x2, 3x1, and throwing it a bunch, I don't think they're really following true run and shoot principles. Probably see a little bit more air raid, but we don't see a lot of true air raid teams either. So I think that stuff's multiple patterns with multiple adjustments in the pattern. Like the run and shoot and air raid type stuff. I think that's tough on offenses, and I don't think there's enough time and enough kids that are savvy enough to pick up all that. So, that's just my opinion on why you don't see it as much. But here's another philosophical deal. Um, and it makes 100% sense. I'm just not willing to do it. If you see teams that pattern match on defense, that means you should probably have choice routes or route adjustments on offense based on the pattern match of the defense. If they're going to match your patterns and your patterns never change, as far as, I don't mean they don't change. Obviously, different concepts have different patterns, but if your kids run very similar patterns no matter what the coverage is and the patterns don't change per se when the coverages match, I think that's a little bit of a disadvantage. So if teams are going to play so much cover pattern match stuff, I think you need to play the anti to pattern match would be route adjustments or conversions. Almost everything we carry is probably a quarters toolbox adjustment. So, outside of our original Palms deal and our quarters deal, everything in there is probably part of a quarters toolbox. And then you get your answers depending on what you're seeing week to week. We play some one high stuff. We play some spot drop, 3 deep. We play it a little bit differently. We play it more like a Tampa 2 with corners up. And then the stack backers are underneath hook to curl players, and the mic is kind of a middle hole. And then we have safeties that play deep half, and then we have a free safety that plays kind of 3 vertical, or he's there to kind of close the middle of the field like a Tampa 2 deal. But outside of that, our base and almost everything else we do stems from our quarters toolbox, and we adjust from there. So along those lines, we always start quarters based or quarter half based, and then we go to there. So we start quarters, then go to palms, then go to 3x1 adjustments. That's kind of how we work it in our quarters toolbox, or that's our pedagogy or our teaching progression. We start quarters first, quarters goes to palms, and then it goes to 3x1. To the weak side, you just start whatever away side calls you have, because it doesn't really matter most of the time what you're doing on the front side or the read side. If the back side has a single, you could be playing quarters to the front side, you could be playing palms to the front side, you could be playing a trips adjustment to the front side. How you handle the single or whatever ways you have to handle the single receiver doesn't really change. So the single side becomes a little bit different from that standpoint. But I think in high school, the more you carry, the crazier. I know guys want to carry a lot of things to have answers for everything and feel like they put their kids in the best possible scenario. But I think you need to do a little bit less and you need to do it better, as opposed to doing more and not doing any of it good. But that's just an opinion. I think defensive coordinators, much like offensive coordinators, get a little bit too carried away with napkins and schemes and try to have you try to have an answer for everything that goes on, and then it's good. It feels good as a coach to make a call that's an answer, but if your kids don't play it, it's not an answer. It just makes you feel better when you go home at night knowing that you had a good answer in. But if the kids can't play it, it's really not an answer. We start sky to the single, and then we build in all our away side calls. So we'll start sky to the single, then we'll go cloud to the single, then we'll go with a kind of bracket or a cone deal to the single, and then we'll go with our hawk or our kind of our what we would call our our kind of our robber quarters theory with that safety. He's an extra player in the run, he's an extra player in the pass. He's going to spin based on where the quarterback looks. So corners all man on one, backers man on the back, and that safety comes out and drop back pass and looks to the single. We're going to double the single. If he looks to the middle of the field, we're going to spin and close the middle of the field. Our favorite trips check. It's in the quarters toolbox, but it's not essentially quarters. It still can be half on the backside depending on where the ball is. But we man number one with the corner. We play palms or 2 read off of 2 and 3 with the down safety and the free safety. Stack backer bumps out a little bit to become what would be the palms dropper between 3 and 4. So especially if there's 4 strong, he's got to be a guy that is alert to a 4 push, so he's got to be a guy that can't get out leveraged by 4, but he's got to try to not let 3 cross his face. And then if they do go 4 strong, then the will or your backside backer's got to push and flood that side, because now on the back, if they go 4 strong, they've only got 1 back there, so you only need 2 for 1. You don't need 3 for 2 when they push strong. So now you need 5 for 4 on the trip side and 2 for 1 on the other side. Bunch trips would usually, if we, depending on how they do it, there's times where if the point man is on the line of scrimmage, there's times where we'll play our base trips check and we'll take the corner and we'll press the point man, and then our safeties will play 2 read off of the other 2 guys in the bunch. There's times where we box the bunch and we go, with an underneath flat player, he's got the first thing out, and then an underneath backer that's got the first thing in, and then a corner that's got the first up and out, and the safety that's got the first up and in, and then maybe a backside safety that takes a 3 vert. Yeah, we call it mix. I think some other teams call it stubby, or saving terminology, I think, is stubby. I don't know what everybody else calls it. We call it mix. Some teams may call it special. I don't know. I had a deal. We haven't played it in a little while, but we used to play teams that really like getting the ball to 3 on the bubble and things like that. We had a deal where we made a special call, and when we called special, we played man on 3, and then we played palms on 1 and 2. Got a little bit funky with where the backers were, but we were really giving up some soft throws to 1 and 2 to be able to play 3 on the bubble and be able to play 3 man. So it allowed us to play quarter, half on. We could play half on the backside too, because we were playing to the backside, depending on what we were getting. We always like to be able to play bracket over there. So special allowed us to do that as well, because anytime you man one of the 3 receivers on the trip side and there's only 2 receivers left, you don't need the backside safety to help you anymore. So you can man 1, read 2 and 3. You could, depending on the splits, you could man 2 and read 1 and 3. It's all a matter of the splits and where they are on the field. Yeah, I wouldn't mind load option per se to the Hawk, because that guy's an extra player in there. So depending on the set, obviously if they orbit motion and gain a guy in the pitch phase, then we've got to do something with the free safety and get him over there to gain a guy. But load option itself in general, I think that high safety for us in our Hawk check, I think he's extra in the run game. Yeah, you can do that, Quiroga. If the splits are tight enough so that, if 1 and 3 switch and your corner has to play that 3 to the flat and your safety's got to play that 1 over the top. If the tights are if the splits are tight enough to where you can make that match with the corner and the safety, then you can go ahead and play your base coverage deal. But usually got to have some type of box zone answer or some type of answer after that, when teams start figuring out, because they're going to start figuring out who the man guy is and where they can get their rubs. Depends on what you're asking, Lewis, as far as within our base coverages. All our base coverages are based off of the amount of receivers to each side and where the free safety declares the strength. So our base coverages are all predicated by the number of receivers to each side and who those receivers are. If we're going to make a different coverage from our base, then it's going to be a signal in. So if we're going to go to 1 free, or we're going to go to some type of 3 deep or 2 deep, it's going to be a completely different signal. But our base stuff is all predicated based on how many receivers there are on each side of the ball and who those receivers are. Like in our normal base coverages, you're going to hear different calls from each safety, because one guy's to the strong side, one guy's to the weak side. Now, if it's 2 by 2 and we're playing palms to each side, then you won't hear a different call. But if it's 2 by 1 or 3 by 1, you're going to hear 2 completely different coverage calls on each side. Technically speaking, Quiroga, in the college world, those guys would tell you that the passing strength has the better receivers to it. So if the Twins stand-up receivers are more athletic, better route runners than the tight end, then the passing strength would be to them. because they're the better receivers. In high school, since we see so much more run than pass, we're probably going to set the passing strength to the tight end so that we can get an extra player over there in the run game. But technically speaking, on paper, 2 by 2 11 personnel, unless that tight end was Gronk or Travis Kelsey or maybe Kittle or somebody like that. If that three is if that tight end, sorry, it wouldn't be a three, but if that tight end to the pro flanker side is the best receiver they got, then yeah, that might become the passing strength, but it leaves us a little bit short with some numbers there in on that side. It's not as bad with numbers in the run game, and then in the passing game, it's not as bad. But depending on what you do to that side, you get a little bit short on the away side sometimes. So you either got to lock the away side and play man, or you got to bump your apex backer out. And for us as a 3-3 stack team, we have an open B gap. So, but it really depends on what you're seeing each week, and then your free safety, each week, you might game plan that to say where you want to set it. But if it's 2 by 2, either way you set it, you should be okay coverage wise. It's going to be the run game. I think that's going to get you, depending on how you set it. But I'd rather my kid, if I wanted this passing strength to be to the tight end and the free safety screwed up and made it to the Twins, as long as we make the appropriate call on the other side, we'll be okay. Though, we just might be light in the run game. I found you from Walford running that load option to Tennessee's cover 6. Not sure if it was pre-put use. Yeah, Wofford's obviously an option team, so that's something you got to be ready for, and you got to be ready to defend. And you got to find ways, if they're getting extra bodies in the pitch phase, you got to find ways to do something with your safeties in the alley to get an extra player. Yeah, we used to do the same. We would, in our 4-2-5, we would set the 3 and the 7 to the tight end, and then we'd set the free safety to the tight end, and we'd play quarters to that side and our 2 read to the other side, or we'd play quarters to that side and lock the backside. If the ball was on a hash mark and the Twins were to the boundary, we might play quarters to the front side and hard cover 2 with the corner force and jam funnel on 1. So you've got some options. That's the greatest thing about split field. The greatest thing about split field coverages is you have a lot of options and a lot of answers you can build in. Yeah, you can't really play. You don't have the extra player to play the 2 read stuff. If 2 goes to the flat, you basically got to play it with just a corner and a safety. If there's a swing deep player from the backfield, it becomes a little bit of an issue. So we normally end up playing it man. I liked it man a lot better when we were 4-2-5 than I do when we're 3-3 stack. I think when it's 3-3 stack with a 5 technique and a stack backer, and we're playing that side man, I think that edge gets a little bit short and soft, especially if they're a quarterback run team with a lead blocker. So 90% of the time, we would set the strength that way and make them throw the ball to the other side if we could. The only time I'd play two read to tight end flanker is if the ball was in the boundary, and I felt like we could make the switch if the corner comes down hard to a 2 in the flat and the safety has to get to 1. I feel like the boundary is the only way we can do that. Splits are too far. Or if the Z took based on whatever your whatever your declarations are for for your guys as far as the field's concerned with splits, what you consider to be a tight split or a wide split. Your dividers on the field that you teach your kid. If that kid gets inside the divider and we think we can play 2 read, we might. If he's outside the divider and we know we can't make that switch, then we're not going to make a 2 read call. So there's some philosophical things you got to look at. There's a bunch of good ones, Jack. Off the top of my head, I wouldn't be able to say who's the best. Probably St. Thomas Aquinas, maybe in Fort Lauderdale, or one of the big 8A Miami schools. Or we have some small private schools around us that are really good. And the Bowl School in our area has won a bunch of state titles. Madison County is a public school going a little bit further to Tallahassee that's extremely, extremely good. So it'd be hard to say who the best team in Florida is. It changes year to year, but a lot of the blue bloods are always going to be blue bloods. That never changes. Yeah, IMG is really good, but it's a different animal because a lot of times they're playing national games and they're playing 5 or 6 teams from out of state. So I really don't even consider IMG a part of what we do. Yeah, Rock. So the Ohio State article was a spot drop cover three article, and it talked about how they had way less busts in coverage, and then it talked about how they teach the inside hook players and the outside curl flat players, and they keep the terminology consistent. So the inside hook curl player has a name, and the outside guy has a name, so that when they want to get multiple with spinning safeties or dropping linemen, they just tell that guy that he's the hook curl guy or he's the curl flat guy, and then they kind of it's kind of like the old NFL theory with multiple rotation, three deep stuff. It's kind of the old NFL guys would just draw X's on the field and say, all right, look, there's four underneath X's and three over the top X's. We can play those X's or those spots on the field with anybody we want. We can rotate strong. We can rotate weak. We can spin a safety down inside the box. You can do whatever you want as long as you have four underneath players and three deep players is kind of the original premise as far as spot drop. But Ohio State said it let their guys play a little bit freer, let them play a little bit faster. There weren't as many coverage adjustments to shift trades and motions. So they felt like it allowed them to play with multiple coverages with different personnel groups because they just had simple ways to teach the drops. And then they felt like they busted way less in coverage. And obviously they have highly skilled players that, can close those passing windows in a hurry. But the problem with spot drop stuff is the passing windows probably get a little bit bigger, and you got to rally and tackle. But eyes on the quarterback and where the ball's coming out of his hands in high school, I think sometimes can be a little bit better. If you break on the ball with your eyes and your vision in there, I think sometimes it can be a little bit better. Um, yeah, I think they added turnovers in, but that anytime you're spot dropping with eyes on a QB, you're probably going to have more hands on the ball when you get a chance than you would in either pattern match or man coverage because a lot of times when guys are matching patterns or playing man, they don't get their eyes on the ball till late. So you'll match things tighter and the throwing windows will be smaller, but you won't have as many um, interceptions as you would in a true spot drop zone theory or in a deal where more eyes are on where the ball comes out of the quarterback's hand. So tighter throwing windows than spot drop stuff, less busts in spot drop, and probably more hands-on footballs in spot drop because your eyes are kind of always on the ball coming out of the quarterback's hands for the most part. That's not 100% true, but for the most part, that's pretty true. When you pattern match, a lot of times your eyes aren't on the cue until very late. And when you play man, a lot of times your eyes aren't on the cue till late. So yeah, obviously they got great defensive players and it helps a bunch. But to me, it's just eye opening when you get somebody that's at the top of their game like that says you can spot drop from three deep and you don't have to play pattern match. Obviously, Saban would disagree, but to see them be able to do it and have a lot of success is what spawned the YouTube video for me because I've always wondered myself, could you play spot drop three deep in high school and effectively stop teams from throwing the football? Because if you could, it's a lot safer and it's a lot easier to teach and you can get more reps. So I've always debated on whether or not you could play a true spot drop three deep in high school. And that article kind of gave me the affirmation that I needed to say that you can do it. What else we got? Already rolled over an hour and a half. My wife and kids are probably mad right now because I'm still talking. But the other corner went in the first round too. Didn't the Vikings take the other corner from Ohio State or the Arnett kid, Damian Arnett or whatever? Wasn't he? I believe he was a corner, not a safety. I think both corners went in the first round from Ohio State. Which Raiders, Kenneth? Yeah, the Raiders took that corner. Yeah, I agree with you. Good night, Rock. Appreciate it all the time. Lions took Akuda, and then I think I thought it was the Vikings, but I think the Vikings took Winfield, the safety from University of Minnesota. Yeah, good call, Kenneth. The Raiders did take they took Ruggs first and then Arnett second. So obviously both corners went in the first round. So any coverages, you have two first round draft picks playing corner. I think any coverages you play are probably better. But very interesting article if you can look it up from the coach from Ohio State. I don't recall where I saw the article. I did a video on it after I read the article, but I don't recall exactly where I read the article. But it was eye opening and interesting to look at, and made me go back and talk to my defensive staff a little bit and see if that's something that we could possibly do and start too high and always spin a safety down, rotate one week, rotate strong, rotate for a back, especially in a 3-3-5 when you could send a fourth from multiple places. If you could send a fourth from multiple places and always spin a safety down to replace them, I think that'd be real good. 3-4 also. Send any one of your linebackers into 3-4 and spin a safety down to replace him. It's kind of what the Steelers used to do with Palomalu in their zone blitz stuff. He'd be a guy that he'd replace an inside backer and play the three hole drop, and then he would be a guy that would replace a safety or an outside backer, and he would play the skiff drop, and so he had the ability to play multiple drops in the 3 under 3 deep stuff, and wherever they sent the pressure, if they crossfired and played 3 under 3 deep, he would replace the two inside backers. If they sent America's blitz or pressure off the edge, he would spin down and become the two seam skiff player, so seam curl flat player, whatever you want to call it. And I think there's some carryover with that that spot drop 3 deep. There's some carryover into hot pressures and zone pressures, so I think it's a pretty good deal. That was always an issue for us as a split field team. When we went to 5-man pressures, it was very hard for us to play 3 under 3 deep and match carry deliver because it's a different form of pattern match than we already play. And I didn't really like teaching it, so we actually we went to 3 under 3 deep hot drop stuff and vision and break off the quarterback, and we had already taught the outside, the hot droppers off 2. We had already taught them how to play hot coverage. All we had to do was teach the middle hole guy how to play hot coverage. So the creation of hot coverage and 2 under 3 deep actually lend itself to us being able to play more 3 under 3 deep with carryover, because I never liked even though I know it's how you're supposed to do it, I never liked match carry deliver and 3 under 3 deep stuff because it was a different pattern match than our base stuff. All right, guys, I'm going to stay on about 6 or 7 more minutes. If you have any other questions, probably cut it off at about an hour and 45 minutes and 10:09 Eastern time where I am now, so that as everybody in the living room kind of settles down, they don't have to hear me talk. But again, as we go through this, I think there's a lot of great questions tonight, a lot of great interaction. Another night with over 25 viewers most of the time. So, as long as we're not in football season and not doing anything football wise right now, and we're in the kind of coronavirus lockdown deal, we'll go on YouTube. And Tuesday nights seem to be working pretty good. They work good for me, so we'll try and keep it as a Tuesday night deal. I already did one Zoom the other night with a guy from GameStrat, so in the future, I may do a Zoom deal where the YouTube live is actually me and another coach, and you guys can ask questions. So I'm looking forward to doing that in the future. Looking forward to adding more things to Patreon. I know Klinger is a member of Patreon, and right when Patreon was about to really start kicking up with film, I was going to take a lot of our drill stuff from the spring and use it on Patreon, and I was going to take our experiments with wide zone in the spring and use it on Patreon. I was going to use a lot of practice film, and then all of a sudden we got hit with this, and I've had to kind of adjust what I've done on Patreon, and hopefully those guys that are on that site will be a little bit, understanding and forgiving about the fact that losing, losing spring ball lost a lot of my film. There's a lot of film already up there. If you're unfamiliar with Patreon, is a subscription site that I charge $5 a month, and I'm able to show film that I don't show on YouTube because YouTube's a free platform. So on Patreon, I actually show film of us running different things on offense and defense. So guys that join Patreon, there's all kind of videos already up there that we've already done, that we did last year or the year before, and six-man pressure videos, and um, uh, different offensive videos that are up there. So there's a ton of stuff on Patreon for $5 a month that I think is an absolute bargain and an absolute steal. We just couldn't keep adding new stuff because of the lockdown and what happened. So that site's a little bit slower right now, but I did some drive-by-drive stuff where I voiced over us playing a defensive drive or an offensive drive, and how that drive went. I did that stuff and it worked out pretty good. So thanks, Willie. Appreciate you being here. I thought the questions were great. I think everybody learns something a little bit every time they're here. So we'll keep doing them. We'll probably keep doing them on Tuesday night. My email address, Lewis, is sting8740@gmail.com. Appreciate it, David. See you next time. I hope next week when we do it on Tuesday night. All right, so everybody, stay safe out there. Appreciate everything you guys do. What coverage is good for defending a three tight end set? Depends on where they put the three tight ends, Charles. Our coverages are all based on deployment of the receivers, so depends on if it's tight end wing to one side, tight end to the other, all three tight ends to one side, creating a trips surface or a trips formation. So three tight ends, I would have to get the formation of the set first, and then kind of tell you where we go from there. Obviously, you'd like to make personnel changes and get another D lineman or a linebacker on the field and get that third safety off, but that's not how we play. So we're not doing that. We're going to try and make changes in coverage with the same guys on the field. Appreciate it, Coach O'Malley. As always, stay safe on Long Island. If you want to talk field 3-4, talk to Joe Delgaze. That's where I learned it from. So we were a field 3-4 team. He had a lot of great success at St. John's in the mid late 90s running it at the college level. They were top 25 in 1AA in defense 2 or 3 times with him as the coordinator. So when it comes to, he actually wants to get on. I might do a Zoom with him. He wants to get on and talk about, talk about 3-4 defense and where it started, and then reduction defense, and then kind of morphing into some other things. So we may do that. But I appreciate you guys. Stay safe out there. We'll probably try and do it again next Tuesday night. So appreciate you all tuning in. Appreciate you guys asking questions. Great questions as always. And stay safe out there. And I'll see you guys next time.